What is up, YouTube? And today we have another tier list for you guys. We have a full tier list talking about the custom group summon and what heroes and also artifacts that you guys should be pulling for. Now keep in mind that this tier list is just my own opinion. If you guys disagree, just let me know in the comments down below what you think should be moved. I'm always open to your opinions, but I think I have a pretty good idea of what is good for both PvP and PvE, so we'll be talking about those units. Now of course some of these units are in the side story summon, so you have to keep that in mind. You should double check. But I'm just going to be ranking these units based on their relative power compared to other units you can select. At the bottom here, you're going to see that there's a tier for units that are not available. These units are either too recently released or collab units. I might be missing a few units down here. I might have a unit that isn't available in the available tier. I double checked, but if that's the case, you guys can just ignore it. But I'm pretty sure this is correct. So yeah, just starting off with this tier list here, we actually have Lua at the top. Now Lua is the most OP unit in the game for PvP still, especially for World Arena, but she's very commonly seen in like Guild Wars defense. Just extremely broken by design because of her skill reset, which can ignore effect resist if you soul burn it, so it's very annoying to actually deal with. Not really much counterplay other than to outspeed her, and even if you do, she's a ranger, so she can hold Guiding Light, so you need specific units to actually counter, like Conquer Lilius or something with an AoE to knock her out of the stealth. Next up, next to the Queen of PvP, we have the Queen of PvE, and that is going to be Tamrin. So Tamrin's extremely powerful. Don't really think I need to explain too much. She's pretty much used in just like every area of content for PvE. Definitely want to make sure you have her. Third on the list, we have Cerise. Now you guys are probably wondering, why is Cerise here? And the reason is Cerise is artifact. So Cerise's artifact is Guiding Light. Basically it gives a ranger stealth at the beginning of the battle, and also you have a chance to reset it at the end of your turn. Extremely powerful. You definitely want at least one copy maxed, and you want a ton of other copies at like plus 15 for other openers such as like Faithless Lidica. Greenlandy in PvP works with it very well. Lua obviously is very good with it. If you use Cerise, it's very good. Just any ranger is very good with it. Even the very meta ML5 unit Briar Wichesaria uses this very well, and she's very powerful, so you definitely want to make sure you have a couple copies, at the very least just one. So you actually have it on some units, on rangers that you want to open with, or you want to actually cycle quickly with to reset the stealth, such as like Landy. Next, we have Rowana, and we're also going to talk about Destina. Pretty similar. Rowana is very good in PvE and PvP. Destina is very good in PvP and decent in PvE. Just both very good to have. Rowana is, I'd say, a must-have in the current meta. Just anything with counters, she's very good against. Abyssal Euphine, Navy Captain Landy, and in PvE, she's extremely powerful in the later stages of Adventure. Also good in Nightmare Raid, just any boss that has extra attacks, she's very good in. She's just good in so many areas of content for both PvP and PvE, which makes her very powerful. And then, yeah, like I said, Destina, very good in PvP and decent in PvE. Another unit you want to have, but I'm pretty sure both of these are available from the side story summon, so keep that in mind. Also, Tamrin should be as well. But like I said, I'm just going to be talking about the relative strengths. Next we have Zahhak, the first pure damage dealer on this list. Extremely easy to build. One of the most gear friendly units in the game because he has 50% crit chance built in. Also good against evasion units because he has built in hit chance. Must have unit for Guild Wars offense, and I'd say kind of a must have unit in general because we have so many Savior Aidens in the game and people using them because she's free to play. So Zahhak counters her pretty hard. If you have him on Symbol of Unity, he can never miss Savior Aiden unless she has like a another evasion boosting unit alongside her, like a cart. But yeah, Zahhak definitely a good unit. Can be used in PvE and can be used in PvP. His damage output is crazy. He has injury, he has a cleanse, he has an attack buff for himself and another ally. His kit is just overloaded. Next we have Yulha. So I think that Yulha for PvP is the best knight outside of LR Crow and also SC Arrowell. And there's some situations where she actually might be better, and she is a monster on Guild Wars offense. You can bring her into pretty much any Guild Wars offense team if you have a healer with her, and she can pretty much slow wipe the enemy side, the enemy defense. She's like a Crow except Earth, and a little bit better in my opinion because her S2 makes her a lot more safer, and she won't randomly die to stuff. And the fact that she heals with her S3 is very nice as well. Next we have Landy. So Landy used to be really high up in the list. She's still pretty high, but not as good as before. Mostly going to be used only in PvE now. She used to be a monster in PvP as well, but that spot has gone to her ML counterpart. but still very good in PvE, right? Very good in expeditions, very good in Nightmare Raid, just anywhere where you need a very high damage unit. She's very, very powerful. She has extremely high single target, extremely high AoE in her S3. She has CR pushing for her team. She has speed buff, which is very underrated, especially for expedition. It's the best buff in the game because you can lap the boss. Very, very powerful. And then we have Luna. Luna is kind of similar to Landy, that she fits the same role. She's a single target damage dealer, only really used if you don't have Landy, to be honest, or in like Fire Expedition. But she's high in this list because of her artifact Draco Plate. So Draco Plate is one of the best warrior artifacts in the game. Just gives you a ton of damage and survivability. For that reason, she is also in the meta tier. Now talking about the strong tier. So these units are still very good, just not as good as the meta defining ones, but these units definitely have merit. If you choose some of these units for your selective or custom group summon, you're never going to have any problems because they're still very good units. So Shu, very good in Guild Wars defense, not as much anymore because people found out how to deal with her. Good in Guild Wars offense as well, just very stable. Also has some decent usage in PvE because of Nightmare Raid. She's one of the best units for Carcanis. It's a very good unit in that regard. Next we have Crow, kind of similar to Yulha, but a little bit worse, mostly for Guild Wars offense, but still very powerful in Guild Wars offense. If you have both of these units, you can always run these units with like a healer, and you should be able to deal with a lot of teams and defenses like that, and get 2 wins pretty easily. Next we have Asaria. Very powerful unit, especially when paired with Tamarin because of her S2 resetting cooldown, can reset idle form, and she has defense breaks and strips. Very powerful in PvE. I wouldn't say underrated anymore because I think everyone knows by now Asaria is very good, so yeah, very good. Politis, very good against cleave. She's very good against units that have CR pushing, like a mid, or just anything that pushes in general. And she's also very good as a cleaver because she's a mage, can hold Toggo's Ancient Book, and she has a ton of AoE damage. Seaside Bellona, honestly, I think I might be rating her a little bit too high. She's not as good as before in PvP. And honestly, in PvE, you can always use Landy instead of her, except for like fire bosses. But I have her this high up because of Wyvern. She's very good in Wyvern. She's also always good in Advent side stories, like hard areas of content. Very good as like a DPS in just like hard bosses. She has very consistent damage, very safe, and defense breaks. And yeah, we don't know what the Rift season will be for the fire boss. Or the ice boss, I guess, the boss where you want to bring ice units. So for that reason, I'm not gonna put her any higher, but I definitely think she'll probably be a core unit for that. They always like to make SSB meta somewhat. And of course for Wyvern one shot, she's the easiest to gear for the first wave. So for that reason, I still have her in the strong tier, and her artifact drink is also very good on her, and it's good on other rangers as well that do a ton of AoE damage. Next we have Rand, premier cleave unit. Also just good in general as an opener. You don't always have to cleave with him. He's very flexible because he just does a ton of damage. Even if you don't, kill units with him, he will soften up the enemies, put defense breaks, and even if you have a standard team alongside him, if he opens and lands a lot of damage and defense breaks, you will pretty much win. And also a top tier unit in Guild Wars defense. Senya, very top tier in Guild Wars defense, decent in RTA, pretty good against ML Landy actually because you can provoke lock her. Also decent in Guild Wars offense, just a pretty solid unit. I think she's a little underrated currently. She used to be ranked a lot higher in other people's tier lists, but I think she's still underrated. Very, very powerful and solid unit. Next we have Peyra. So Peyra is similar to Rand, and she's a very good opener. She has attack buff and more support and escort, which makes her more utility based. The only thing is, I don't even think she's better than Rand. They used to be like very comparable, but I think Peyra is kind of a ways off from being comparable to Rand now because she has escort buff, which was like the biggest reason you brought her, but SC Airwall is like one of the best knights in the game, and she has escort, so you're kind of overlapping. If you pick Peyra in your drafts, you can't really pick SC Airwall, which is kind of weird. And also barriers could counter pretty heavily. She has very hard counters such as like DJ Basar, whereas Rand doesn't really have hard counters per se. A mid used to be like meta, but for PvP, but not as much anymore. She is decent as an opener still. You have to pick her a little later on though, because she gets countered by Politis and also Moon Bunny Dominion now, so very hard to pick her, but if you set up your draft, you can actually pick her. She's very good in Guild Wars offense and can be decent on defense, although there are still some counters to her. Green Villager, mostly because of his imprint, speed imprint. If you like to go fast, you definitely want Green Villager because he's a very good cleaver. He has speed imprint, which is very nice, very high base speed, so you can actually cut enemies, and if you actually kill an enemy, of course, his S2 will boost the CR, so you can actually cut and do even more damage, so good for cleavers, I'd say, and people who like to speed contest. Next, we have Green Celine. Very good against like non-attack skills, right? You have like Conquer Laius, Even like a mid she's okay against, so she's also pretty decent against Lua. So very good unit for that, but she is pretty niche, but in that niche she is one of the best. Next we have Violet. Violet is like a pretty much all-around unit. He just dodges, tanks, and does a ton of damage. RNG wins you the game, but because the Hawk is so good and Briar Witch is meta, definitely fallen down a bit, but he's still very good in PvE. You can use him in KDs, you can use him in Automaton Tower, Ancient Inheritance, you can use him in Expeditions, right? And in PvP, he can actually still be picked, even in RTA if you save him later into the draft, because he has that 1v4 potential still, right? Then we have Diane, solid Soul Weaver. For PvE, Tamrin's just better for the most part. In PvP, she's just too slow right now, and she gets countered by a lot of units, but still decent, I'd say. I think you can still pick her later into the draft if you want a good Soul Weaver that can cleanse and attack buff. And critical hit resistance is very, very powerful. And in PvE, you can actually use her in some areas instead of Tamrin, such as like Wyvern. If you want to like speed farm and venture, harder stages, she's very good. And also good in Nightmare Raid as well for some bosses. So now we have the OK tier. These units are very niche. I'm not going to talk about them too much, but you want to kind of stay away from these units. They're not really good in the current meta, but they used to be before. There's some ones I want to talk about that you might be wondering why you're here, such as Arunka, very good against barrier teams. Even in RTA, sometimes you can pull her out. She's very good in Godo's offense. Chloe, good for hunt one-shots. Another standout is probably Haste. After his recent buffs, he's pretty good because of Rift. I actually chose Haste because I never pulled any Haste copies, I just realized. But Haste will definitely help my Rift team, so I chose him. I have every other unit. And another unit is probably like more, there's a lot of different units you can choose from here. They're all very good in different ways. Fairy Tail Tenebria, if you want to actually use like a Solitary of the Snow for PvP, choosing her is okay because one, she's a decent unit for opening if you pick her against slow teams, and her artifact's very good. If you like cleaving, Summer Break Charlotte is decent with like Zio and Peyra. Summertime Assaria is good with like Rand cleaves. Elagos is good in standard cleaves. If you're struggling against like Meter Cowrix, Sharun is good. There's a lot of options. Bologna is good for PvE. All these units have different niches you can actually use them in. They're pretty strong, but they're just very narrowly used that I don't really recommend choosing them. And then the not worth tier, just not worth it in general. Unless there's some artifacts you want, like specifically, I would stay away from them. But for the most part, I think you want to stay within the meta and the strong tiers. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video though, guys. I don't want to really drag this on any longer. It's pretty simple, I'd say. Just look at the artifacts that you need and choose them, or look at this list and choose some meta or strong units. Very, very good. Definitely recommend, if you don't have a Guiding Light copy, no matter what, you choose Cerise and try to get one copy, whether it be with coins, because that artifact is a game changer. It literally makes units like turn from unplayable into playable, so definitely a good artifact to have. But pretty much it for this video. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, and I'll see you guys next video.